Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 223. That is the 223rd trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight series here at PR from the Heart as we continue the 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart and the host of the Children's Book Spotlight series, joined as always each and every trolley stop with my faithful furry friend and forever companion. Little Forrest always reminds me, he says, John, I am not only your co-host of the Children's Book Spotlight series, but your fellow furry friend and forever companion in this wonderful journey called life. We hope that all of you are doing well, wherever you are, wherever you may be. Special thanks to all of you who took the time to email and text and Facebook and Instagram message and send lovely thoughts on the Twitter X platform. Little Force really appreciates all of the heartfelt birthday sentiments for his second birthday. So now he is entering into his third year of doggy existence, walking this earthly plane. And it's interesting because, as many of you know, Little Forrest is very important to me. And for those who have been a huge part of the Children's Book Spotlight series since day one, and also our sister program, David Newell, of course, the beloved Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for the past nearly 4 years, he has joined us on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, where we take the time to be able to review some of the top children's books from the shining stars in the world of children's literature. You know that libraries are the pillars of our community. We say that many times here on the Children's Book Spotlight series and also on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. But over the past several years, and really heightened up more so recently now more than ever before, our libraries are in the spotlight, and maybe not necessarily for all of the highest and best reasons, so to speak. If you remember, if you're the age of myself or around that age, around 43, libraries in many respects were safe havens. You could walk in, you could enjoy whatever book that you wanted to be able to enjoy. And now, and it's a word that I very rarely tend to use here because we try to keep things on the up and up, the highest and best here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. In many respects, children's literature in our libraries are under attack, depending upon where you live in this beautiful country of ours. And book banning, which is a phrase that I never thought that I would, we would be using at this particular point in time. It's something that we have to address. It's something that we have to have a conversation about, because just like whenever you have any sort of emotion or feeling that comes, if you have two choices, you can express it, you can have a conversation about it, you can be with it, or you can try to stuff it down. And you know what happens when you stuff down your emotions and your feelings? It just makes things, that much more expansive, and not necessarily for all of the best reasons. But this is a conversation that we need to have with our kids. And if you are a parent, if you are a caregiver, if you are a custodian of a little one, if you are an educator just beginning the back to school season, the 2024-2025 school year, you might be wondering, how do I have a conversation with my little ones about book banning, and even more so to discuss the importance of reading? We use the term almost since day one here on the Children's Book Spotlight series of the love and joy of reading, and leave it to a brand new children's book to help us see the way to remember that not only is it important to be able to stand up for libraries, not only is it important to be able to stand up for our favorite books and for our favorite children's authors and illustrators, but it's important to stand up for yourself. It's important to stand up for the things and the people that you believe in. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and you can read, enjoy, and leave a 5-star review for Roar for Reading. That is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Simon Schuster. You can head on over to Amazon.com. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for our featured guest here, who is waiting in the wings, who is joining us here as our featured guest in episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Beth Ferry is by leaving a 5-star review for Roar for Reading that lets her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, and educators. And as we like to say here on the program, those who love great children's books. Of course, if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copies of Roar for Reading, make that kind recommendation. You don't necessarily have to get into a shouting match. You make that kind recommendation. This is what we refer to as the little tip of the cap emoji here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. And again, let them know that you heard about Roar for Reading right here as part of the 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. To be precise, our 223rd trolley stop. The trolley is going to be heading across the country, racking up some mileage, as it always does whenever we celebrate anniversaries. We're heading from San Diego to the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. Joining us is our featured guest here on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, New York Times bestselling children's author, Beth Ferry. Beth, we appreciate the free time and joining us here in our neighborhood, spending some quality time with little Forrest and I. Congratulations on the official release of Roar for Reading, and thank you for spending some time with us here today on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're really looking forward to this, and just to be able to take care of the remaining housekeeping notes. So we go from tip of the caps to housekeeping, so to speak. That's a little bit, a little bit of a sweeping of the broom. One of the ways you can also pledge your support for Beth, in addition to pledging your support for us here at PR from the Heart and at the Children's Book Spotlight series, if these messages that we are starting to talk about, the importance of standing up for yourself, standing up for the things, the people that you believe in, of course, ensuring that our libraries, which are the pillars of our community, can stay that way moving forward into the future. We encourage you, if you are new to our neighborhood or if you've been watching the program for a long period of time but have forgot to do this, you can subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And of course, we are approaching 20,000 subscribers via our official YouTube channel. So again, that allows us to be able to continue to provide this quality programming that we continue to be able to share for the past 6 years and counting as well, too. Beth, we're always big about learning about our fellow neighbors here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. And it's interesting because there are origin stories that we all have, and especially on the Children's Book Spotlight series, there can be anywhere from 2 to 3 or even more origin stories. Before we talk about the origin story of Roar for Reading, for those who are learning about your work for the first time, obviously you are a well-known name in the world of children's literature, but it's interesting because I've been very blessed and fortunate to do PR publicity work for children's authors for 10 years. And there's times where it's like, I've never heard of you, John. I've never heard of PR from the Heart. And I've learned to try to not take things personally, because it's very easy to say, I've been in the industry for 10 years and you haven't heard of me or the work that I do. I'm sure that, people come into your life and they're learning about your work for the first point and for the first time in their lives. So could you share with us specifically where it began for you? Was it a specific moment in time, or was it a series of experiences? When did you know that a large part of your mission and your purpose was meant to better the lives of children, and to do that in the form of children's books?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I always say that I am a writer because I was a reader. And I like to say that to kids because you don't have to go to college to study writing. You don't really need a degree. All you really need to do is read books. And so I think my message is more about reading. And one of the books that I write, my hope is they'll enjoy them and want to go and get out, not just my books, but as many books as they can, because that's how I grew up experiencing the world, is just by reading. So really, I think, from my childhood, I think most, kids, you do read. Some kids love it, some kids don't. And I just happen to love it. And so just, through my life, I just read and read and read. And then one day, you're kind of like, I'm going to write because I love books. I love words. I love writing. And so, yeah. And then I think, I waited till my kids grew up. I have some kids and, you're really busy with your kids. But then once they were like, settled in middle school, I'm like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And so I tried. And so that's basically my journey.
I appreciate you sharing that. And it's very interesting because whenever we're very blessed and fortunate to achieve some form of status or title in life, undoubtedly, when people see New York Times bestselling author and they're at their favorite bookstores, they're at Amazon, and they see your work, it's very easy to maybe have the misconception that you have it made in the shade, that life is rainbows and gumdrops, that whenever someone is a New York Times bestselling children's author, it's just like the heavens and the earth are parting left and right, choirs of angels singing, and that you don't experience polarity and contrast. But we are,
Right.
even though we are, divine beings, we also navigate through the human experience. So we move through challenges, difficulties, obstacles, problems, stressors, troubles, worries, and especially when you're a creative, right? It's not necessarily the easiest journey as well, too. Specifically of note, what were some of the primary challenges and difficulties that you navigated through on your path, and what were some of the things that helped you to get through to the other side of those?
I think, it's a competitive field. So, when I was young, there weren't very many, I'm going to say children's books. There were picture books, chapter books, but they're not like today. And so, it's a competitive field. And so what are you writing that, is important enough to be published or good enough to be published? So that's kind of what you're always like every single time I am writing a new story and hoping to get it published, it's not like there's no, it doesn't like the door opens and then it just is open forever. It opens once and you get that book published, and then the door closes again and you have to start anew. So you have to make sure that everything you're writing, is worthy. But and that's subjective, but that's the best part, right? Because it is so subjective, and that's why there are so many books. There's so many. Don't you go? I mean, I go to the bookstore and I'm like, wow. I mean, it's like so awesome. There's so many books. You could just sit down forever. I mean, and sometimes I go to the bookstore and not to the library, because the library, I don't know, my library, everything is just alphabetical, whereas the bookstore will put out the new books. And sometimes, you're interested in the new books, like what's getting published. And I think that's also really fascinating to see, not only the subject, but the word count, the way it's being published, like even some of the art, the art changes too. You can pick up a book from the 1970s and it's from the 1970s. The art changes. So yeah, I just like to read. Like I truly, I like to read everything. Kids books, adult books, teen books, all of it.
I can definitely sense and feel that love and joy of reading has inspired you, not only in your life and loving children's books, but also to the creation of Roar for Reading, which we're going to be talking about momentarily. It's also long since been said that when you take the time to perfect your craft, it's roughly around like 10,000 hours. That's, again, the age-old expression that you put in the time. If you're a farmer, you put in the 10,000 hours. If you're a blacksmith, you put in the 10,000 hours. If you're a writer, you put in the 10,000 hours. Was there a specific moment in time that, and perhaps maybe it was when you received the title of New York Times bestselling author, maybe it was that, but was there a specific moment or series of moments when you said, I know that I've made it? And it's not to say, it's interesting because we live in a world where it is nice to get adulation and praise, but it's so important, especially since we can be very self-conscious about ourselves. Mental health is an issue for adults and children now more than ever before. It's so important to also remind our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and as we like to say, our fellow shining stars, that it's not about the titles in life. It's not about what you're acquiring. It's not necessarily about the toys, the trinkets, the bells, and the whistles. It's about how you feel about yourself. The extension of that, when you do receive the adulation, the praise, it is wonderful, because then it is also reminding you that you're doing a wonderful job. Was it when you received the title of New York Times bestselling children's author? Was it maybe a little bit before that? Was there a specific moment or moment?
No, I don't think that I will ever feel that way. I think that, I really think that I don't know what it means to make it. I really don't. What is that? I don't even know what that means. Every day I get up and I'm excited to work on the story that I'm working on. And I think that's what propels me, is that, that when you go to, and, children's book authors luckily get to go to schools, and, that's really, I mean, have you done it? Have you gone to a school like and talked to? Yeah, I mean, right? Like there's nothing like it. Like you feel like no matter how you feel, and truly it is being creative, sharing your work, reading your Amazon reviews. Like it's not easy because, not everybody can like what you do. But when you go into a school and, these kids are truly overjoyed that you're there and they love your book. And there's nothing better than that.
I
That's
think
all I need.
it's
Yep.
it's the perfect time to mention what if we're huge fans of Mr. Rogers, in case you haven't noticed with like the trolley stop and the neighborhood references. But Fred would always say it's such a good feeling, and I can undoubtedly feel and sense that when you take the time to walk into a school and you share your work with them, that it really is such a good feeling. We hope that you are enjoying, we hope that you're having several good feelings right now by watching episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We're in the midst of our 6-year anniversary celebration on the 6-year anniversary, or we are in the midst of the 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Joining us is our featured guest, New York Times bestselling children's author, Beth Ferry. We are almost ready to crack the cover and dive into the pages of her brand new children's book, Roar for Reading, illustrated by New York Times bestselling illustrator Andrew Joyner, and of course, published by our friends at Simon & Schuster. You can head on over if Amazon.com, that is, if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can read, purchase, and enjoy, and also leave a 5-star review for Roar for Reading. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Beth is by leaving aforementioned 5-star review. That lets you know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and as we like to say here on the program, those who love great children's books. Again, if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstores, we like to say here on the program, they're the pillars of our community, and they do not stock their copies of Roar for Reading. Make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series as part of our 6-year anniversary celebration. If, of course, you are an educator, teacher, principal, librarian, superintendent, and you are mapping out your game plan for your students for the 2024-2025 school year, and you would like to facilitate an author school visit with Beth, we've included her official website in the description below. And for all of our friends and neighbors who are on the East Coast, depending upon when you are watching and enjoying this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series, September 28th, Beth will be at the Chappaqua Children's Book Festival. October 5th, the Princeton Children's Book Festival. October the 13th, the Warwick Children's Book Festival. October the 19th, the Morristown Festival of Books. And just before Christmas, December the 7th, Storybook Holiday at Frostburg University. More details are on Beth's official website, which once again, we have included in the description below. The origin story for Roar for Reading. And it's interesting because, again, depending upon wherever you live, like Florida, it's just, Florida's Florida. And in many respects, it is, one of the hotbeds for book banning, but it's happening in other states. Thankfully, like when I live out here in the San Diego area, we're not necessarily impacted all that much. So it realistically depends on where a person lives, who's in office. Obviously, it is an election year as well too. Could you share with us a little bit more about the origin story of Roar for Reading? Because the story which we'll be talking about momentarily, we go back to the annals of time when lions were the librarians. So obviously you're doing your part to kind of kidify the whole experience that we've been moving through: children, parents, families, teachers, librarians, superintendents, anyone who's basically in charge of the educational system. When did you know as well that this message needed to be shared? Before talking about the origin story, when did you know that this specific book needed to be released out into the world?
Yeah, it's kind of tied together, the origin story and the message, because I was sent a piece of art. The way that this story started was from Andrew Joyner sent me a piece of art of a little lion with a book, like kind of reading at his father's feet. And the whole idea was kind of like writing an ode. He drew these cute lions reading, and I was going to write an ode to, that relationship between lions and libraries that obviously is fictionalized, the New York Public Library lions. And so that's what I started out writing. I started writing out kind of like this, nice history and how librarians, if you spell librarian with an I-O-N at the end, it can be library, lion. But then as I was writing it, I was going in a direction, which happens, and not that I expected to go. And all of a sudden I'm writing about book banning. And I'm thinking, and I live in New Jersey, which is, pretty liberal. We don't have a lot of book bans. In fact, I've never seen a book banned. Here's the other problem with book banning, right? If a book isn't there, how do you know? There's no big sign that says, we removed this book, it's not here. You only know if you need that book and you go get that book, and then it's not there. So that's one of the other big problems with book banning, is that you might not even know it's happening. And so Roar for Reading, I think just subconsciously, I just, you read about it, you hear about it, it's just in the zeitgeist. And I just, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm writing this book because I am not an activist. Most of my books are about friendship and pets and the beach. I write because, again, I want kids to want to read other books. But you know, the library is everything. Like the library is that great equalizer. Anybody can go and get any book they want. And think about that, right? Like it's truly, I mean, it's such a gift that we don't even appreciate. I go to my library every week and I don't even like, I'm not sure I appreciate it enough that I go in there and I can take out 20 books if I want and take my time and read them and renew them and just spend time with books. So yeah, so basically, I didn't set out to write this book, but I felt obviously somewhere in my heart that this book needed to be written. And so I wrote it.
And I appreciate you sharing that as well, too, because it's the way in which you describe libraries. It's interesting because David Newell, who we've had the good fortune of being friends and colleagues and fellow neighbors with, I remember when we first turned when we used the term pillars of our community. And in the very beginning of the story, under the author's note, you describe libraries that they're the best free buffets, offering endless choices so everyone can pick and choose what they like. One of the things that we did learn through the pandemic, one of the silver linings is that it's important to be grateful for everything that we have. And in many respects, we took libraries, librarians, and even books for granted, because one of the very few things that we could individually and collectively enjoy were books. Those were still there. I mean, even like, movie theaters, like you couldn't go into a movie theater. So more people were taking the time to read than, and obviously we have our streaming platforms and such, but you couldn't go to the movie theater. You couldn't go to, you couldn't go to a baseball game or any sort of sporting event in any way, shape, or form. So just
But people also had time, like to jump on that, right? People
yep.
had time in a way that was different than normal busy life because you're not running to all the things that you were running to previously. So now all of a sudden you have more time. And, reading takes time. And I think that's why books are so powerful because, it's not a 5-minute, video on social media. It's not even a 2-hour movie. You're invested in reading a book.
Correct.
And so I think that's why they're more powerful. It's the most powerful because you're immersed in that story in a way that you really aren't any other way. And it's because, it takes time and the author has the time to, develop the characters and the plot, and most importantly, to make you care.
And there is something, this is why, I know that audiobooks are important, ebooks are important, but there's something about the experience of holding on to a book and reading it and enjoying it in the old school fashion. And there's something that happens when a child is read to by their mother, their father, their grandmother, their grandfather. There's those treasured memories and moments that are created, and they're going to remember, kids, that is, when they grow up, how that book made them feel. And so again,
Yes.
these are really the extensions of even going into a library and enjoying books. One of the things that we never like to do here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, we never like to give away the kit and caboodle, the whole kit and caboodle. That means to share the whole story from beginning to end. As we're cracking the cover, as we're diving into the pages of Roar for Reading, we're introduced to Julius, who is this little lion cub. And he's on a really magnificent journey in many respects, because obviously he's a huge proponent of reading himself. But his mom is on a mission. That's probably the best way to be able to classify it as. And before talking a little bit about the story and what children and parents and families will enjoy and learn from the story, you pull no punches with the story, because even like, some of the words in the book, you'll see the term like controversial. And I mean, I can only imagine like, a young child talking to their mom or their dad or their elder brother or sister, like, what does controversial mean? But again, these are conversations that kids need to have. And children's books there's a term that Mr. Rogers used, and even though it was used in a different way, when he was trying to secure $20 million worth of funding, when he spoke in front of Capitol Hill, when he spoke in front of Congress, Senator John Pastore, he said, "Senator Pastore, what I do for children through the neighborhood is a resource of care." Children's books are a resource of care. They are a conversation starter where, again, if a parent or an educator's having difficulty bridging a sensitive subject with a child, boom, here comes the children's book. Were you necessarily afraid of any kind of backlash, because this is again, like it's a very powerful book. It's shared in a kidified form, which is great, but I give you so much I admire your courage for being able to share the message, because you could have tried to dumb it down and you didn't. You're talking to children as if you're talking to them right on their level, knowing the fact that this is something that they need to learn about and understand. So could you share with us a little bit more about the putting this book together?
Yeah, I think, so having your mother be a librarian, right? If you have a mother I don't have a mother who's a librarian, but I'm assuming if you have a mother who's a librarian, any job that your parents have, you kind of get a behind the scenes sneak at like really what that job entails sometimes, especially he goes to work with his mother. So I think one of the things about book banning that I hope is successfully portrayed in this book is that a lot of times, there's lots of problems, right? Lots of problems. And if it doesn't affect you, you're kind of like, not my problem. You can't worry, first of all, about every single problem or you'd never get out of bed. But I think what I hope that Julius does for children is it makes, they are allowed to empathize through him. What happens if someone told you couldn't read not even your favorite book, but any book that you wanted to read, because, we have that, there is parental guidance and there should be parental guidance. Not every book is for every age. Sometimes you need to be a little older to read certain books. And that's why there are librarians and parents. But to take the book off the shelf, I mean, what's that message? And so I'm hoping that through this, young lion cub, kids can be like, wait a minute, like, right, it could happen to him, it could happen to me. And then once, you can empathize in that way, then you're like, no, it's not right. It's not right. So, and there is like at the end, there's nothing that kids, and this is what I hope too, kids cannot go and, attack book banning on their own. They need to have the conversation with adults. This book should be read with an adult because it's not, it's not the happy little, friendship story. But, there are conversations and there are steps, there's steps that with your parent, you can write a letter, you can go to a meeting, you can learn what's really happening. Because a lot of times, you can put your head in the sand and hope the problem goes away. But when does that ever happen? So hopefully as kids, like it empowers kids to realize that even if they're young, they have adults in their life that can help them navigate something, if they have a problem.
And there is something that kids can do about it. And it's very interesting because when we see that there is a problem that is out there, we can either just further exacerbate the problem and wonder how can we get to the bottom of it, or we can put our heads together and open up our hearts more and say, let's see how we can create a solution to the problem. And you're doing your part to be able to, at the very end of the story, you're using the acronym of ROAR, R-O-A-R, breaking it down to recognizing, organizing, acting, and respecting. And in the back of the book, when you enjoy Roar for Reading, you'll be able to fully see what that means. So it's a matter of, it's also a good feeling for kids knowing when they can do something about it. Like, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, there's a problem, but guess what? We can do something about it. And there's something as well about kids, because as adults, we can feel angry, cynical, jaded, upset, depressed, stressed. And here comes the little one in our life saying, there's something we can do about it, right? And so there's something really about that as well too. And there's also something about the synergy that you have with your illustrator, Andrew. For those who have been fans and viewers of the program since day one, whenever an author and an illustrator begin to work together, depending upon what the synergy is, if your book is published by a larger publisher like Simon & Schuster, the author and the illustrator, they're not necessarily, on the phone, 5 hours a day, hey, how are things going? Well, how are things going with you? And what was the highlight of your day, right? You have to really trust the fact that the illustrator that is chosen is more along the lines of your third ear, your second heart, so to speak. And I really love it, especially like the cover art is really the gateway to the story in many respects. So on the cover that you're now seeing on screen, you see some of the other fellow animal friends and neighbors of little Julius. One is holding a little sign that says "Save Our Stories," which, by the way, interesting side note, and I know that I mentioned this in the PR from the Heart Green Room. When I was at the ALA annual conference and exhibition here in San Diego during the summer, they tend to give little trinkets out to those who are actually in attendance at the event. And so I managed to receive this bracelet, and then I learned about it after the fact, and like, okay, it was not just a cool bracelet, it actually says "Save Our Stories." So I kind of thought that there was a little bit of like, okay, hey, this is how we're supposed to be, connecting here on the 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. But even more, it looks like a little sheep that has a sign that says "Books Belong," and then there's what looks like a little frog or a crocodile that's holding up a sign that says "Reading is a Right." So it's a matter of, again, there's a very strong kidified way. You could have had it be like the exact opposite, but you made it in a way that was it was very empowering, very
Good.
inspiring, but also, kidified at heart, so to speak. Talk to us about the synergy between yourself and Andrew, because he's obviously well established, well respected in the world of children's literature. But I love the fact how you're utilizing your platforms for the highest and greatest good. When you have a New York Times bestselling illustrator and a New York Times bestselling author, you could have easily been like, on the high and mighty rocker saying, we need to do this and here's how it has to look. And you could just be more in what people will refer to as like an ego. But you took the time to utilize your platforms for the highest and greatest good to do something about this problem that's existing out in the world. Talk to us about the experience of working with Andrew, and now that the book has been published and that children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books are enjoying the story. What's been some of the early feedback that you've been hearing on the story?
Yeah. So again, I think it came out maybe like 6 days ago. So I haven't even read it to like kids yet. I actually haven't even had the chance to like read it. And school just started here. I don't know when you guys start school, but school started
normally around like the middle of August.
Yeah, see, we start like September. So I feel like, I'm going to a school. My first school visit is going to be in October. So it'll be interesting to hear that. But as you said, there's really I'm not calling Andrew up. He's not calling me up, asking me, like what animals should I mean, the animals, as I think the biggest gift that an author gets is when they see the sketches for their book, because, the amount of detail in this book, like truly is just, I could pour over it. It's very busy. It's very kid friendly. There's a lot of little, like, even if you look at some of the titles, like in the library, he made up a lot of little titles, and those are fun. You could spend a lot of time just looking at the art. But yeah, we did not collaborate. I think I said that I had seen the picture of the lion cub reading. So I don't think anyone expected this book that we happened to write. So then when I wrote it, thank God he loved it. He was like, oh, this feels so important and I'm happy to do it. And so then, and he did again, the colors, everything about it like speaks to me.
This is wonderful. And again, being able to take this into the form of a book for children to be able to enjoy, because idealistically speaking, we want to get to a point where we know and we feel with every fiber of our being that libraries can continue to be safe havens, that books can continue to be safe havens. It's interesting. I just managed to see a video. I forget where online, but it was it might have been through one of the popular comedy social media platforms. And LeVar Burton, of course, the host of the beloved Reading Rainbow, was doing a video talking about books. And he was talking about the books, and then like the whole point of it was basically like he was off his rocker at the point where he's like, wait a minute, like all these books, he started like reviewing 3 books, and he's like, well, wait a minute, we can't talk about this. Okay, now they sure can't ban this book. It talks about da. And then all of a sudden it's like, and then so he's like, okay, well, guess we can't talk about this now. So at the very end, he's like, he was, a huge proponent of the stories that need to be read are the ones that are being banned, because there's something that's within those stories. We always like to be able to provide here on the Children's Book Spotlight series a very useful and supportive information for parents grandparents, caregivers, custodians of little ones, educators, so that they can immediately extract from a children's book spotlight series episode, implement it into their life, and then the lives of the children that are in their lives, whether it be their own children, their grandchildren, their students. Specifically speaking, if there's someone that wants to have a conversation with their children about the importance of reading, talking, it can be a very sensitive conversation. Obviously, one of the things that we can suggest is obviously giving them roar for reading, read the book with them. But what are some other supportive ways to be able to have this kind of conversation where it can break the ice? It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be, I'm afraid to have this conversation, because ultimately we want kids to know that books are safe havens, that libraries are safe havens, that, that their favorite books aren't going to be taken away from them, so to speak. And just in the world in which we live in, there is more fear energy than there ever has been beforehand. So what are some specific ways, whether it be some tips or tools or strategies that you can recommend for parents, grandparents, caregivers, educators, to begin to have the conversation with kids about not even just the importance of reading, but this whole sensitive thing that's happening with book banning as of right now?
I think, because what I think is going to happen is, the child is going to hear the term from not a caregiver, from somebody else, like whether it's on the news, on social media. And, you hope that when you hear something that you don't know what it is, you ask the question. And so, ALA, the American Library Association, has a huge resource. Like if you go on their website, there is huge resources with information about where books are being banned, how many, but it also gives you all this information about how, to address it. So, I think it starts with a question, because like I said before, you don't really know a book is banned if you're just walking into your library. There's no big sign. The librarians aren't, so you might not even know this is happening. So if you hear it, you're hopefully asking a question. And if you can't ask your parent, hopefully you're asking a teacher, or, you're a librarian. What does that mean? And then, yeah, there's books, but there's also the American Library Association, which to me is like the biggest place that you could get the best information on, what can I do? What can I do?
And I appreciate you also sharing that as well too, because this goes back to the phrase of changing the world, and that can seem like a little bit of a cliche. We hear how we can. I think it was Eric Clapton wrote a beloved song called "Change the World," right? And we can listen to the song and say, "Oh, Eric, you're just on your high and mighty rocker." Who am I? Who am I, Beth Ferry? Who am I, John Masiulionis? Who am I, little Forrest, to be able to change the world for those children who are watching with their parents, because we always have families watch the children's book spotlight series together. This message of book banning and reading. It's a part of an even bigger message about kids being able to stand up for themselves, stand up for what's right, how they literally can change the world. If there are those children that are watching, or even those adults who have the inner child that's of course still all within us, we can have those fears and insecurities. Who am I? Insert your name here to change the world. What would be some words of encouragement and support that you would like to be able to share for someone who doesn't feel that they can change the world?
I think one of the things that I think is the most frustrating is sometimes the most ignorant voices are the loudest voices. And so you're hearing loud voices yelling, they're talking over you. And so what I think, especially about the back of, the acronym ROAR, is that you don't have to yell. But you don't give up either. So, right, you go to the meeting and you listen to what's happening, and then you write a letter. And if nothing happens, then you write another letter, and then you keep going to the meetings. You don't have to. I think it's there are a lot of people that are screaming these days, and I think it's intimidating, especially to children. And I think the message is that's not how things get done. Screaming doesn't solve anything. Banning books doesn't solve anything, but neither does screaming, because they're trying to intimidate you. And so I think if you understand that, like if you say, people say it again and again, or you get yelled at, you stop listening when someone's yelling at you. You can't even understand it because they're yelling at you. And so I hope kids know that, it's the calm, don't give up. You believe in something, you don't have to yell about it, but you don't give up trying to achieve what you think is right.
And that's beautifully shared specifically too, because kids know that they have a voice, and it's a matter of, just like you have your own platform, just as we have our own platform here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series and PR from the Heart. It's a matter of what will you do with your voice?
Right.
Will you use it for the higher and greater good, or will you use it to create more fear and insecurity and anxiety and doubt in the world? Because Lord knows that we have quite a large amount of that right now. We always close out each Children's Book Spotlight Series episode with two specific ways. We always feel his presence and his spirit here whenever we do an episode of the program, any trolley stop. We remember the late Fred Rogers, of course, the host of the beloved long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And in many respects, whether it be through his time on The Neighborhood, whether it be when he talked across the country, actually doing research on Fred Rogers several years ago at the Fred Rogers Institute in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh, I learned that Fred actually did a talk at the American Library Association. I believe it was in 1991, if I'm not mistaken. So Fred, really was a huge proponent of this, most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmy shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. And he always kept the time, Beth, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute. He always encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of helping us remember the fact that we have a voice, that we have skills and gifts and talents, that we can empower ourselves to do anything in the world, to change the world, to make it an even more beautiful place, to make it a more beautiful neighborhood. Who are some of the people that you would like to publicly recognize here on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series that have helped love you, Beth Ferry, into being?
Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah, I guess, my parents always took me to the library. So that's, you can always thank your parents for, letting you love books and letting you read. But I also think, Simon and Schuster, it's brave to publish this book for me and for Andrew, but it's also, brave for the publisher to do it too, because you don't know what kind of feedback that they're doing. So I think when you work with publishers that, get what you're trying to do. So my editor, her name is Celia Lee, and she was just such a great proponent of this book from the start. And so that, it feels you do, because, like it's not scary, but it is, sharing any of your work, like you've written a book, it's very personal. You're putting your heart in your words into the story. And so, yeah, when it's received kindly or with kindness, even if it's a rejection, I'm very grateful for my experience in publishing and all the people, that have been kind to me through the years.
And it's long since been said, and I'll paraphrase Fred's words, that whether those people are near or far, whether they're still with us walking this earthly plane or shining down, that they're smiling on you, Beth, knowing the indelible impact that you've made, that you're continuing to make in the lives of children and parents and families and educators. And as we like to say here on the program, those who love great children's books, in addition to being a huge proponents of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and beloved fellow neighbors of the late Fred Rogers, we're also huge Disney buffs here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. The Disney magic always helps us to remember that we have the ability to bring to form and shape our dreams, our desires, our goals, our ambitions. We can fulfill our wishes. And we have the ability to help those fellow neighbors on our path do the very same, whether it be family members that we're guided to support, friends, colleagues, clients, children that are in our lives, especially the children of the world. And so we go back to the year 1992. Great year, an amazing year. We remember the late Robin Williams. He voiced a beloved iconic character referred to as the Genie of the Lamp in Disney's animated classic Aladdin. Since day one here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, we have our trusted Genie lamp with us wherever we go. We have a little segment that we'd like to call Three Wishes. You've given freely from your heart, Beth, for a number of years. And so now this is your time to receive. So you are being given three wishes. Now, I believe the only automatic disqualifier is one, you can't make someone fall in love with you. That has to happen organically. And you can't ask for more wishes. But I believe, according to the Genie of the Lamp, anything else is fair game. So what would your three wishes be? They can be for yourself, for your family, for the children of the world. What would your three wishes be?
Wow, this is like such a hard question. You don't really think about wishes. Isn't that sad? We should be thinking about wishes, but I don't
We should.
think about it. Okay, so I guess my first wish would be for my kids, right? Because I feel like, you grow up in your life and what the challenges are. And I feel like it's hard to anticipate the challenges in this future because of technology and stuff. So yes, I guess my first wish was my children would be happy and healthy for their whole lives. I really, and then, you can't help but say, like, wouldn't that be nice for everyone? And, that sounds so idealistic because it's not reasonable or realistic, but that would be really nice if all kids, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's always just worse when it happens to a kid, anything, when you hear that it's a child involved. So yeah, I guess if I'm wishing, like, if I can truly wish anything, yeah, I wish everyone gets to grow up in a great, childhood and be like, because, then you're a happy, hopefully healthy adult if you've had a nice childhood. So can every kid have a happy childhood?
That's true. And that's a beautiful wish to be able to put out.
Yeah, I really, do I have to do three? Three's really hard. I'm gonna go toward like puppies. Wouldn't it be great to have a like your puppy, like every day? Like, it grows up and then you just wish, you're like, okay, be a puppy for today. And then it's back to being that cute little puppy. And then it grows up and does whatever. And then one day you're just like, but today be the puppy again so I can pick you up and love you. I truly think I might wish that.
You know what, Dad? It's long since been said that when one's wish comes from one's heart, there's a greater chance of coming to fruition. If anything, that would make for a good children's book or for a great movie or an animated series for kids. But it would be nice to be able to have that, if little Forrest, I mean, thankfully he still has his puppy energy, even though he's turned 2. So and I still remember when I could literally hold him in the palm of my hand, and now it's like both hands, like 18 to 20 pounds later. Kind of thing. We are beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, New York Times bestselling children's author Beth Ferry. We are fully immersed and enjoying her brand new children's book, published by our friends and neighbors at Simon and Schuster, Roar for Reading. It is now available, illustrated by New York Times bestselling illustrator Andrew Joyner. You can head on over to Beth's official website, which we've included in the description below. We've also included, well, of course, Amazon.com. The name, I guess, says it all, unfortunately. But if Amazon.com is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Beth after purchasing, reading, and enjoying Roar for Reading is by leaving a 5-star review that lets her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copies of Roar for Reading, make that kind recommendation. A little tip of the cap, let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series as part of our 6-year anniversary celebration for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents, as you are doing your part to be able to create the most wonderful school year for your students as part of the 2024-2025 school year. If you are interested in facilitating an author school visit with Beth for your students, because again, Roar for Reading is a book that can be enjoyed by everyone in the process, you can head on over to Beth's official website, which we've included in the description below. We encourage you to keep the conversation going post Children's Book Spotlight series. We've also included Beth's official social media platforms in the description below. And if you are in the Northeast, or if you just are a huge proponent of traveling, depending upon when you are watching and enjoying this Children's Book Spotlight series episode, you can meet Beth in person beginning September the 28th at the Chappaqua Children's Book Festival, October the 5th at the Princeton Children's Book Festival, October the 13th at the Warwick Children's Book Festival, October the 19th at the Morristown Festival of Books, and December the 7th, right before Christmas, Storybook Holiday at Frostburg University. Again, you can head on over to Beth's official website, bethferry.com, for all the details on that. One of the fastest growing endorsements in the world of children's literature. It's similar to, if you're of a certain age, and you remember the late movie critic duo Siskel and Ebert, when they loved a movie, they would give it 2 thumbs up. Well, on that similar wavelength and synergy, little Forrest, who again just turned 2 a few days ago, when he loves a children's book, he probably gives it 2 paws up. And I am proud to say that little Forrest is probably giving 2 paws up for Roar for Reading. He loves all the animal characters, and he was probably wishing that he was a part of Roar for Reading. You can see himself, drawing himself in the story, so to speak. So again, one of the fastest growing endorsements in the world of children's literature. But when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We see hands from myself, hands from Beth, paws up from little Forrest, and hands from the little ones on screen. As we like to say, that means mission accomplished. Job well done. But fear not, there are many more magical trolley stops to come. Not only here as part of our 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series, but then we have our eyes headed on to the holiday season and then the 2025. It'll be here sooner than we know it. If you are a children's author, if you are a middle grade author, and would love to share your inspiring story in the release of your new book on a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series, just as Beth joined us here as our featured guest here today on episode number 223 of the program, we encourage you to head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Instagram, X, Facebook, all at PR from the Heart. Again, we already mentioned it briefly earlier in the program, but if you are new to the Children's Book Spotlight series, you are new to PR from the Heart, and you want to enjoy the sister program of the Children's Book Spotlight series, we are proud and privileged and honored to be able to be joined by the beloved David Newell, who played Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We are fully going to be enjoying, hard to believe, our 4-year anniversary celebration. So just as we're enjoying our 6-year anniversary celebration now, the Children's Book Spotlight series, right after the holiday season, we're going to be enjoying our 4-year anniversary celebration of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast. As a little tip of the cap to David's character on the program, Mr. McFeely, together, David and I, we deliver heartfelt reviews from the newest children's books that are available in the world of children's literature, from the shining stars in the world of published children's literature and self-published children's literature. If you are a children's author and would love for David and I to be able to deliver a heartfelt review of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast in 2025, again, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or any of our social media platforms at PR from the Heart. And as we have been continuing to also enjoy our 10-year anniversary celebration here at PR from the Heart, we have been proud and privileged and blessed and honored to be of service to some of the top names in the world of children's literature. John Parra, Catherine Roy, the beloved and iconic Sharon Lois and Bram, Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, Skinnamarink-a-doo, we love you. In addition to those children's authors who are just taking flight. So if you are a published author with one of the larger publishing houses, or one's journey who's just taking flight and you are publishing your own book, it obviously helps to know that there is support out there and that you are not alone. If you are looking for a dedicated PR publicity support to create a book media tour in a city of your choosing, or a national book media tour, we're super excited to be able to head off to the NBC studios very shortly in New York City. So we look forward to being of service to many of you, not only for the holiday season, but also in 2025. Head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, schedule your courtesy connection call. Let us see how we can be of service to you. One final time, we encourage you to head on over to Beth's official website, which again is bethferry.com. We also encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. Be sure to read, enjoy, leave your 5-star review for Roar for Reading that lets Beth know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you are an educator, teacher, principal, librarian, superintendent, be sure to connect with Beth via her official website, bethferry.com, to secure and facilitate your author's school visit for the 2024-2025 school year. Remember, if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, they are the pillars of our community. If they do not stock their copy of Roar for Reading, you can roar internally, but you can also make that kind recommendation and let them know that they should stock their copies of Roar for Reading as well. But again, when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. We want to thank you for your continued support here at PR from the Heart and for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series. If this trolley stop has brought some joy into your life, if you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, if you are saying, Beth and John, now I know the importance of reading now more than ever before and why it is so integral and vital and paramount for all of the stories that are out there to be shared, for all of us to be able to enjoy, especially for our little neighbors, for the next generation. If you haven't had the chance to do so, one of the many ways you can also pledge your support for us here at PR from the Heart, for the Children's Book Spotlight series, and for Beth, is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 223 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And again, share it on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. And of course, be a part of our near 20,000 subscribers, our fellow friends and neighbors, our official subscribers via our official YouTube channel. So again, we want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators, middle grade authors as well alike, who are doing much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books, such as Beth. For, again, your continued support of local libraries and children's and independent bookstores. Again, they're the pillars of our communities, we like to say here at PR from the Heart. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world one final time. Again, we felt his presence and spirit really wherever we go, not even just here when we do a Children's Book Spotlight series episode. But of course, we remember again our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. Did you know that Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds during his entire natural adult life? Interestingly enough, there's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. In Fred's own private numerology, that was his own way of saying how much he cared about us. And so it's a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers. And as little Forrest and Beth were kind enough to spend some quality time with us here in our neighborhood, we are reminding you of your inherent worth and your inherent value. We are reminding you of your skills, your gifts, and your talents, and that you have the ability to change the world, to empower yourself and to empower others. And we do that through our favorite 3 numbers. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. So we share our favorite 3 numbers here at PR from the Heart in the Children's Book Spotlight series 243. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. So again, we are reminding you of your inherent worth and your inherent value. We see you. We know that you are capable of big, wonderful, and amazing things. And again, that you too can change the world. We are reminding you that you are perfectly whole, healthy, complete, just as you are, that we like you, that we love you, just the way that you are. So for Beth Ferry, Forrest, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for spending some quality time with us here in our neighborhood as we continue the 6th-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.